Have you ever imagined that the child you've loved and raised for years might not be your biological child? Have you ever thought that a single DNA test, just a small piece of paper, could shatter an entire family, break trust, and turn everything upside down? This isn't just a fictional story. It could happen to anyone. A small mistake at the hospital, an accidental switch, or even a secret buried for years. Sophia Williams once believed she had everything: a happy little family, a loving husband, and an adorable 5-year-old son. But one day, her mother-in-law secretly conducted a DNA test, and the results changed her life forever. Lucas, the boy she had cherished for 5 years, was not her biological son. So, where was her real child? And what would happen when the truth came to light? Get ready, because the story ahead will take you on an emotional roller coaster, from suspicion, shock, and heartbreak to an agonizing choice that will change everything. Let's begin. Eleanor Whitmore sat in the grand armchair in the middle of the living room, her cold gaze fixed on Sophia Williams, the daughter-in-law she had never trusted. In front of her, little Lucas, her 5-year-old grandson, was happily playing with his Lego pieces. Eleanor narrowed her eyes as she observed the child. "His eyes don't look like Andrew's," she murmured, gripping the armrests tightly. "His nose doesn't match either, and his hair. There's not a single trace of the Whitmore family in him." A familiar feeling of suspicion surged within her, one that had simmered for years, but had never been as clear as it was now. Eleanor had never accepted Sophia as her son's wife, a girl with no family background, no status. How could she possibly be worthy of entering the Whitmore family? But Andrew had been too infatuated with Sophia, ignoring his mother's disapproval, and married her anyway. And now, looking at Lucas, Eleanor was more certain than ever. She had been right. "Do you need anything else, Mother?" Sophia's gentle voice broke the silence as she emerged from the kitchen, carrying a cup of hot tea. "It's a bit chilly today. Herbal tea will help keep you warm." Eleanor shot her a glance, her expression filled with doubt. "No need." Her voice was dry, curtain. Sophia let out a quiet sigh but didn't argue. It had been 5 years since she had married into the Whitmore family. Yet, her mother-in-law's coldness had never changed. She reminded herself to be patient, for Andrew, for Lucas. But she had no idea that today was the day Eleanor had finally decided to act. That night, the mother-in-law's secret plan. Eleanor stood outside Lucas's bedroom door. It was slightly ajar, revealing the boy sleeping soundly beneath his blue blanket. His steady breathing echoed softly in the quiet room. She stepped in cautiously, her gloved hand gripping a small pair of tweezers and a clean plastic bag. Bending down, Eleanor carefully plucked a few strands of hair from Lucas's pillow and sealed them inside the bag. "All it takes is one DNA test," she murmured, her eyes flashing with determination. "Once I prove he isn't my grandson, Sophia will have no way to keep deceiving this family." Just then, a faint noise sounded behind her. Eleanor spun around, only to realize it was just the wind, rustling through the window. She stood still for a moment, waiting, listening, then swiftly left the room, clutching the plastic bag tightly in her hand. The next morning, submitting the test sample, Eleanor sat in the waiting room of a private hospital, her fingers absently toyed with the plastic bag. The evidence she had stolen the night before. Across from her, Dr. Mitchell, a renowned geneticist, reviewed the paperwork. "You'd like a DNA test for these 2 samples?" Dr. Mitchell asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes?" Eleanor cleared her throat, trying to appear composed. "I want to confirm their biological relationship." Dr. Mitchell nodded and carefully took the sample. "The results will be ready in 1 week." Eleanor stood up, nodding with authority. I'll be waiting. As she left the clinic, an unfamiliar sense of exhilaration coursed through her. Just one more week. In one more week, she would finally have the answer she had been seeking for so long. If Sophia had truly deceived Andrew, Eleanor would have all the justification she needed to cast her out of the Whitmore family forever. 1 week later, a shocking revelation. Eleanor entered the testing facility, her hands trembling slightly, though her expression remained cold. Dr. Mitchell stood before her, holding a white envelope. Your test results are ready. His voice was calm as he handed it to her. Eleanor took a deep breath. Her fingers tightened around the envelope. Slowly, carefully, she opened it. Her eyes scanned the words on the report. And then, she froze. Probability of biological relationship, 0%. Her face paled. Lucas was not Andrew's biological son. Her hands trembled. Her heart pounded so fiercely, it felt as though it might burst from her chest. She read the results again. Once, twice, just to make sure she wasn't mistaken. No, this can't be. Her voice was barely a whisper. There must be some kind of mistake. Dr. Mitchell met her gaze, his expression serious. We ran the test multiple times. The results are accurate. Lucas is not biologically related to Andrew. The ground beneath Eleanor seemed to crumble. Had her suspicions been right all along? Had Sophia really been unfaithful? Her grip on the paper tightened, her face twisted in fury. I need to confront that woman immediately. Clutching the DNA test results, she stormed out of the hospital. Only one thought consumed her mind. Sophia deceived this entire family. She will pay for this. Back at the Whitmore estate, the confrontation. The door burst open, so forcefully that Sophia jumped. The glass of water in her hand slipped, shattering on the floor. She turned, startled. Eleanor stood there, her face twisted in fury, a piece of paper clenched in her fist. Andrew stepped out of his office, his frown deepening at his mother's unusual outburst. Mom? What's going on? Eleanor didn't hesitate. She threw the DNA test results onto the table, her voice laced with bitter disdain. Lucas is not your son, Andrew. Silence. A deadly silence filled the room. Sophia's eyes widened. Her heart stopped, mid-beat. Andrew picked up the paper. His hands trembled as he read the results. What? Eleanor crossed her arms. Her gaze pierced through Sophia. Do you have anything to say, Sophia, or will you keep lying? Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. She looked at her husband, then at Lucas, then back at Eleanor. No, that's impossible. Lucas is Andrew's son, I swear, but Andrew said nothing. The air grew thick, heavy, suffocating. Suspicion took hold of everything. The Whitmore living room. A deadly silence. The air in the Whitmore living room grew thick with tension. A suffocating silence settled over everyone. As Andrew stared at the DNA test results in his hands, his face turned pale. His eyes scanned the words over and over, as if refusing to believe what he was seeing. This can't be happening, Andrew murmured, his voice unsteady. How is this even possible? Across the room, Eleanor stood with her arms crossed, her gaze icy. But inside, she was triumphant. She finally had proof. Her gaze shifted to Sophia, collapsed on the floor, her trembling hands clutching the fabric of her dress, her face drained of color, tear-filled eyes wide with shock. Spare us the act, Sophia. Eleanor's voice was sharp, laced with contempt. I've suspected you from the beginning, and now I have the evidence. Lucas is not Andrew's son. No! Sophia shook her head violently. Tears spilled down her cheeks. That's not true. Lucas is our son. Andrew, you know that. But Andrew didn't answer right away. He stared at the DNA results, his heart breaking into pieces. How could this be real? He thought back to the first time he held Lucas in the hospital, the way the boy clung to him when he was scared, that bright, innocent smile every time he called him Daddy. And now? This damned piece of paper was telling him that Lucas wasn't his son. Andrew lifted his gaze, his voice hollow. Sophia, do you have anything to say? Sophia's eyes widened, her heart shattered at the doubt in her husband's voice. You think I cheated on you? Her voice cracked. Is there any other explanation? Eleanor's tone was sharp as a knife. Or are you going to keep lying? If Lucas isn't Andrew's son, then whose son is he? Sophia froze. I don't know. Oh, come on, Sophia. Eleanor's anger boiled over as she pointed at Lucas. A child doesn't just appear out of nowhere. You've deceived my son. And now you're still trying to cover it up? Lucas peeked out from behind his mother, his wide, innocent eyes filled with fear. His grandmother's voice thundered through the room. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew. His mother was hurting. Backed into a corner, Sophia took a deep breath. Her resolve hardened. She turned to Eleanor, her eyes fierce. We need to do another test, she said firmly. There must have been a mistake. I did not cheat on Andrew, and I will prove it. Andrew's eyes flickered with uncertainty. He didn't know what to believe anymore, but if Sophia was truly innocent, then why did the test say otherwise? After a long pause, he nodded. Fine, we'll do it again. Eleanor scoffed. Good. I'll be there to make sure it's done right. The hospital. A second shock awaits 2 days later. The three of them arrived at the hospital. Sophia, Andrew, Eleanor, Dr. Mitchell, the same geneticist who had conducted the previous test, greeted them with a professional demeanor. I understand that you want to verify the results, he said, flipping through the files. We will run the test again to ensure there was no error. Sophia met his gaze, desperation flickering in her tearful eyes. Yes, please. I need to know the truth. This time, the samples were taken directly from Sophia Andrew Lucas, all under strict supervision. Eleanor stood with her arms crossed, watching intently, waiting for the same result, waiting to finally rid her son of Sophia. Dr. Mitchell closed the file. We'll have the results in 48 hours. 48 hours later, a terrifying revelation. Dr. Mitchell entered the conference room, a folder in hand, his face more serious than before. A heavy silence settled over Sophia, Andrew, and Eleanor. Anticipation, dread, fear. Dr. Mitchell took a breath. I've reviewed the results carefully. His voice was measured. And there's something all of you need to know. Sophia clutched Andrew's hand. Her heartbeat hammered in her chest. Dr. Mitchell placed the results on the table. Lucas is not biologically related to Andrew. Eleanor smirked, ready to say, I told you so. But then, Dr. Mitchell continued. But not only that, he took a deep breath. He is also not biologically related to Sophia. Silence. A stunned, deafening silence. Sophia felt like the ground had crumbled beneath her. Her breath hitched. Her vision blurred. No, that's impossible. Her voice trembled. Lucas is my son. I gave birth to him. How could this be? Andrew was just as shaken. Doctor, what are you saying? If Lucas isn't our son, then where is our real child? Dr. Mitchell let out a heavy sigh. He turned the pages in his folder. We looked into the hospital records. From the day Sophia gave birth. He hesitated, then continued. There was another woman who delivered a baby on the same day. Sophia's entire world shattered. No, she whispered, shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. No, this can't be happening. Dr. Mitchell slid a file across the table. Her name is Emily Davis, and we believe the babies were switched at birth. Eleanor staggered back, nearly losing her balance, her usual arrogance stripped away. You're saying Lucas isn't my grandson? Her voice, for the first time, fragile. Sophia burst into tears. Then where is my real child? Dr. Mitchell nodded solemnly. We've contacted Emily Davis. She's been raising the child who was meant to be yours. Andrew squeezed Sophia's hand, his own eyes filled with pain. Eleanor sank into a chair, speechless. For the first time in her life, she realized she had been wrong, not just about Sophia, but about everything. Sophia's world shatters. Sophia sat frozen in her chair, her hands ice cold, her eyes locked on the file lying on the table. It felt like she had fallen into a nightmare, one she couldn't wake up from. Lucas, the boy she had cradled, the boy she had loved, the boy she had raised for 5 years, was not her biological son. Her throat tightened. If Lucas wasn't hers, then where was her real son? Andrew sat beside her, her husband of many years, too shocked to speak. He gripped Sophia's hand, searching for some fragment of truth in the doctor's words. Across the room, Eleanor, the mother-in-law who had doubted Sophia from the beginning. She sat stunned in her chair, her usual arrogance stripped away. She had been suspicious of the wrong person. Dr. Mitchell's voice cut through the suffocating silence. We've contacted the woman involved in this mix-up. He took a measured breath. Her name is Emily Davis. She's been raising the child that was meant to be yours. The room fell deathly still. Emily Davis? Sophia repeated the unfamiliar name. She had never heard of this woman before. Dr. Mitchell nodded. We've asked her to come meet you. She's on her way to the hospital, right now. Sophia swallowed hard. Her hands trembled. She wasn't sure if she had the strength to face this woman. The woman who had been raising her real child. The fated meeting. The woman raising Sophia's son. 30 minutes later. The hospital doors swung open. A weary-looking woman stepped inside. A small boy trailed behind her, his striking blue eyes, the exact same shade as Andrew's. Sophia's breath hitched. Her heart pounded violently in her chest. As she stared at the child, this was her biological son, Emily Davis, a woman with a gentle but anxious expression. She stopped in front of them. Her eyes met Sophia's, then Andrew's. She hesitated, then spoke, her voice trembling. I'm Emily Davis. The doctors told me about the test results, about the truth I never imagined. She looked down, her hands gripping her son's small fingers. I don't know what to say. Sophia opened her mouth, but no words came out. She could only look at Emily, then at the boy standing beside her. Andrew's voice was barely above a whisper. What's his name? Emily glanced down at the child. She gently held his hand. His name is Noah. Noah. Sophia felt like she had just heard something sacred. The child she had carried in her womb for 9 months was named Noah. Slowly. She knelt to his level. Her eyes studied every detail of his face. He had Andrew's jawline, the same piercing blue eyes, and something about his expression felt strangely familiar, almost like looking into a mirror of what should have been. Noah, Sophia whispered, her voice breaking. The boy looked at her, a bit wary, but then he smiled. Emily's heartbreaking realization. Emily let out a shaky breath. Her fingers rubbed her temples, her voice barely holding together. I don't know what to do, her voice cracked. I've raised Noah since the day he was born, but now I find out He isn't mine. Sophia gazed at the woman before her. Her heart ached. She understood Emily's pain. They were both mothers. They had both poured their love into their children, only to learn today that they had been raising someone else's child. Andrew placed a comforting hand on Sophia's shoulder. He, too, was reeling from this overwhelming truth. His voice was quiet, but full of uncertainty. What do we do now? For the first time in her life, Eleanor was silent. She had doubted Sophia, accused her, believed she had betrayed the family, but the truth was entirely different. Eleanor swallowed hard, her voice cautious. You've been raising Noah all these years. Are you going to give him back? The question sent a shiver through the room. Emily clenched her fists. Tears welled up. Her entire body tensed as she whispered, I don't know. How can I just let him go? But at the same time, I can't keep him from you. The air grew unbearably heavy. Sophia took a deep breath. She knew that today wasn't just the day she found her son. It was the day she would have to make the hardest decision of her life. A painful choice. How do you decide? No one had an immediate answer. Emily was crying. Sophia was crying. Two women who had never met before, now forever bound by an unbreakable connection. Andrew finally spoke, his voice steady but solemn. I don't think we can rush this decision. Both Sophia and Emily have a right to these boys. Sophia nodded. She reached out and took Emily's hand. Her voice was soft, yet filled with strength. We don't have to decide everything today. We can take our time and figure out a way for both of us to be in their lives. Emily looked at Sophia, her tear-filled eyes, now full of gratitude. Thank you, Sophia. I don't want to lose Noah, but I also don't want you to be separated from your own child. No one knew what the future held, but at least this was not a battle over children. It was a journey to finding the best path for both mothers and their sons. Sophia's silent struggle. Sophia sat quietly in the living room, her gaze fixed on Lucas, the little boy she had loved, the little boy she had raised. For 5 years, he played innocently with his building blocks on the floor, blissfully unaware that his world was about to change forever. Across the room, Emily Davis sat in unease. Her eyes drifted to Noah, the biological son of Sophia and Andrew. She had cared for him since birth. She had loved him as her own. But now, the truth had turned everything upside down. Andrew sat in silence. Eleanor sat beside him, once proud, once full of judgment. Now, she was the quietest of them all. Regret lingered in her eyes, deep, unmistakable. A single unspoken question hung in the air. How could they decide the fate of these two children? Conflicting emotions, the fear of losing a child. No one wanted to lose the child they had raised. No one could easily accept that the child they had loved so deeply was not biologically theirs. Sophia looked at Noah, the little boy with the same piercing blue eyes as Andrew, the unmistakable features of the Whitmore family, ones she had never noticed before. This was her son, her real son, but the thought of being separated from Lucas made her heart ache. She glanced at Emily. Emily didn't say it, but Sophia could see the fear in her eyes. Emily didn't want to lose Noah either. The silence was heavy, thick with unspoken emotions, until Andrew cleared his throat. His voice was gentle, yet firm. Maybe we should take our time, he hesitated. We can't just swap the boys overnight. Emily nodded immediately. Yes, I can't imagine waking up one day and not seeing Noah. Her voice broke. But I also know I can't keep him from you. Sophia's eyes stung with tears. She knew she couldn't just take Noah away from Emily either. A heartfelt decision. How will they raise their children? After a long moment, Sophia spoke slowly, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. We don't have to do things the traditional way. Maybe we can find another way. Andrew frowned slightly. What do you mean? Sophia turned to Emily, her gaze gentle yet determined. Emily, I know you love Noah, just like I love Lucas. We can't force them to change parents overnight. But what if we give them time to adjust? Emily remained silent. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty. Then she slowly nodded. You're right. I don't want Noah to feel like he's being taken away from me. Maybe we can ease them into it? Andrew sighed. His voice was careful, uncertain. So, you're saying we should raise them together? Sophia nodded. If Emily agrees, we can try. For a long time, Eleanor had been silent. Until now, her voice, sharp, disbelieving. Are you all insane? A child needs a stable home. Do you really think these boys can live between two families without being confused? Sophia turned to her mother-in-law, her expression firm, unwavering. They've been hurt since the day they were born, Mother, but now we have a chance to fix things. Eleanor stared at her, her lips parted, as if ready to argue. But then she fell silent. She knew she no longer had the right to decide. She had been wrong too many times, and this was no longer her fight. The first steps of a new journey in the following weeks. Sophia and Emily put their plan into action. They arranged meetings so the boys could gradually get used to their biological parents. Lucas spent more time with Andrew and Sophia. Noah started visiting Emily regularly. Slowly, both children became familiar with their new families, without feeling forced into change. One day, Sophia arrived at Emily's house to take Noah to the park, but before she could say a word, Noah suddenly ran up to her, his little arms wrapped around her. "Mommy, Sophia!" Noah called out, his eyes shining. Sophia froze, her heart pounded. It was the first time Noah had called her Mom. She knelt down, her arms wrapped around her son, holding him tight. A warmth spread through her, filling a part of her heart. That had been empty for so long. A unique family, a happy ending. As time passed, the two families blended in an unusual but beautiful way. Sophia and Emily became friends, raising their children together. Andrew learned to love Noah as his own, and Lucas remained the son he cherished. Eleanor, once fiercely against Sophia, finally accepted the new reality. One day, during a family outing to the park, Eleanor stood at a distance. She watched Lucas and Noah playing together. Their laughter filled the air, pure, joyful, free. For the first time, Eleanor smiled, a smile that had never appeared before. When she looked at Sophia, slowly, she stepped forward, gently placed a hand on her daughter-in-law's shoulder, then sighed. Her voice, softer than ever before. Maybe I was wrong about you. Sophia turned to her, her eyes filled with warmth, a soft smile on her lips. Maybe you were. Eleanor let out a small chuckle. None of them had expected their lives to turn out this way. But somehow, everything had fallen into place. And most importantly, Lucas and Noah were surrounded by love. You've just witnessed a shocking story filled with twists, emotions, and heartbreak. A story not just about motherhood, but about forgiveness, acceptance, and how fate can cruelly toy with us. But now, we want to hear from you. Put yourself in their place. How would you handle it? The story you just watched isn't just fiction. It touches on real-life issues. Babies switched at birth, human mistakes, and how each person chooses to face the truth. Try putting yourself in each character's position and think about how you would react. 1. If you were Sophia, how would you handle discovering your child isn't biologically yours? Imagine raising a child for 5 years, loving them as your own, only to find out they aren't biologically yours. Would you immediately swap children to be with your real son? Or would you continue raising the child you've loved? Knowing that genetics don't define love, could you build a relationship with your biological child while still keeping a bond with the child you raised? Sophia chose not to separate the children immediately. She wanted to give them time to adjust before making any final decisions. Do you agree with Sophia's approach? Or would you have done things differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you were Emily, could you let go of the child you've raised? Emily had loved and raised Noah for 5 years, believing he was her son. Then, she discovered the truth. If this were you, could you give up the child you've loved and nurtured? Would you fight to keep him, believing love matters more than biology? Some parents in real-life cases of switched at birth choose to keep raising the child they've bonded with. Others return the child to their biological family. Did Emily make the right choice? If you were Emily, what would you do? Share your opinion below. 3. If you were Andrew, how would you feel realizing your child was switched? Andrew was devastated when he found out Lucas wasn't his biological son. He had spent years loving, protecting, and teaching this little boy, only to be told they weren't related. Should Andrew have been angry and demanded to take back his biological son immediately? Or do you agree that he should have taken time to let the children adjust rather than forcing a sudden separation? Andrew chose to keep loving Lucas, while also building a bond with Noah. Do you agree with Andrew's approach? How would you handle it? Let us know in the comments. 4. If you were Eleanor, would you regret doubting Sophia? Eleanor had the biggest transformation in the story. She doubted, accused, and resented Sophia, believing she had betrayed the family. But when the truth came out, she realized she had been wrong all along. If you were Eleanor, would you be able to admit your mistakes? Do you think Sophia should forgive Eleanor? Should Eleanor make up for the pain she caused? Not everyone has the courage to admit they were wrong. Eleanor changed. But was it enough? Do you think Eleanor deserved forgiveness? Or should she have faced consequences for her behavior? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Join the discussion. We want to hear from you. This story isn't just a dramatic roller coaster. It raises deep questions about family, love, and unconditional bonds. Do you agree with Sophia, Emily, and Andrew's decisions? What would you do in their situation? Do you think their solution was the right one? Or would you handle it differently? Comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.